Hello everyone. So, I'm back again because my last video on my rocket fuel factory has done surprisingly well. So I'm here, I wanted to go on to my PetroChem setup, so my plastic and my rubber production. In a future video I'm probably going to go and upgrade my rocket fuel with, now that I've got tier 6 belts, Mark 6 belts and stuff, but in the meantime I'm going to show off basically like an intermediate PetroChem setup and then a late game PetroChem setup. So I'm going to start with this first one here. Now I built this one around the time of Mark 4 belts, as you can see. So this is sort of like your, I call it a mid-game plastic and rubber. I would not recommend doing this as soon as you unlock it, because there is quite stuff you need to get going, but it's very good. It'll produce 800 rubber and 800 plastic from one pure oil node. So as you see here, I've got an impure, and then this one's also an impure, all maxed out. And this one here is a pure, but it's going up to the advanced setup up there. We'll go over that second. But for now, I just want to quickly go over the intermediate setup for making plastic and rubber. So it starts off here. I've got water, plenty of water. So I would recommend building this near a water source. And one of the first steps is packaging water, because we're going to be taking use of a recipe called diluted packaged fuel. So I've got, I think there's 26.666 recurring is the magic number in this. And over here is just a little setup to, I'm making a little bit of fabric out of my polymer resin. You could convert this into more, I think rubber is the most efficient, just to bump your output a little bit more, but I haven't bothered. And so I've just got a full storage container of fabric for my crafting needs, and then the rest just gets put into the sink. This is just a little, I started the process up by making canisters out of the spare polymer resin, because you do need quite a few empty canisters for the production loop. So the main bottleneck with this being in Mark 4 is the max output of each sort of plastic and rubber is 1,600. So even if you have Mark 5 bolts, you're still going to need sort of 3 loops, if you will. So as you can see, I've got 4 loops. All of my water's going into this line of, what are these called? Refineries. So the first line of refineries is simply this alt recipe, heavy oil residue. Again, probably the most powerful in the game. So that turns your crude oil into heavy oil, and I think that is 20 from, 600 divided 30, that would be 20 refineries. And my OCD got the better of me here. You might notice all the white lights here. That means I've overclocked all of these ones, because I wanted to make it even. Otherwise it was going to be running space in this area. It was going to be a logistical nightmare. And given the abundance of power shards in this update, it's not the worst thing, even in the middle game, to do. So yeah, basically I think I did the same thing with all these unpackages as well. Yeah. So if you don't want to overclock, it's 26.6 of these and 26.6 of these, because they produce the same amount as a packager does, 80 and 80. So yeah. So it goes into these, which is the diluted packaged fuel. Again, another very powerful recipe, which essentially doubles your, instead of getting, I think it's 30 fuel from 40, you get 80 fuel from 40 with just a few extra steps. So yes, these goes into the packages, which then unpacks the fuel and then puts the canisters back into the loop. So once you have enough canisters in your loop, you don't have to think about it again. Or just rolling, doing their thing, going loopy loop. And I've got these spares here with a buffer of each canister. So it's, as long as they don't fill up, and as long as the canisters have somewhere to go once they've emptied, then it shouldn't ever block up. But anyway, I'm just going to follow these fuel lines. up to the next step of the operation. Bear with me. So here is where the magic happens. So there's 2 more alt recipes you need to make this work. It is recycled plastic and recycled rubber. So this is why we're making all the fuel, because both of these recipes require fuel and the opposite, like PetroChem resource. So my piping got a little bit janky here, but so I've got 4, as I said before, there's sort of 4 sections. I think this is the 26.666 number again, but I've actually, just for even's sake, I think I've actually got 14 on either side, and then it's like 13.333 each. Just for, yeah, because I've split it into 4. It's just made it more simple in my brain, and with the limitation of the Mark IV belts again. So this will keep going. It will make rubber and make plastic, and then they'll go to the opposite sides of each column. As you can see there, I've done a bit of clipping there. Don't look at that too closely. So this goes through here, and the other important thing when you're setting this up is to set up, sort of try and make a couple of smart splitters. You might not be up to smart splitters at this stage, but just try and research them and just get 1 or 2, because you need to be overflowing this to overflow it back into the loop. Because if one side, just say you're using a heap of rubber in your production and you run out of rubber, there'll be no more rubber to go into the plastic side and produce more plastic, which then will stop it, or the whole loop breaks basically. So you need to prioritize. You want your first and your best rubber and plastic going back into the loop, and then any excess. So I think you'll find these are left out is any, and center is overflow. So it firstly goes into these and then overflows into here. And I've got, I don't know, I don't normally do this with these loops, and I don't remember if it's necessary, but I've got more overflow sinks going here for the plastic and rubber. And it goes over here and then back to my main base, so that it produces a total of 800 per minute profit on the plastic and 800 per minute on the profit rubber. Now, for the advanced setup. So I did this one in tier with Mark VI belts, and you need to have blenders and stuff unlocked as well. So you can get away in like aluminium stages, but I just sufficed for this. It got me through until I had the resources to build this properly. So it's essentially the same thing. It starts off with the 600 oil per minute, goes into there, into the 20 refineries, turns it into heavy oil residue. And now this is where it's using all those loops and all those containers. The game gives you this fantastic recipe called diluted fuel, as I'm also using in my rocket fuel factory. And it cuts out all the middleman. It just turns this directly into fuel. And I think it's actually I think it might be 16 blenders will do the trick from memory. So it's a nice even number, fits nicely on your foundations, splits into 4. So this goes into this, and then it's the same thing here, except I've got it laid out slightly more nicely, whereas I've got all my rubber ones on the top and all my plastic ones on the bottom. And for this one, as you can see, I'm just, what have I got here? Oh yeah, there's the sink, so it is definitely sinking. So that's, as I said, important to keep it going. And I don't remember what I was producing here. Oh, more containers. I don't remember why I did that. Anyway, doesn't matter. So then this goes again, yeah, loop, loop, and then I've got, if you come over this way, I've got them, as you can see, the Mark VI belts are very helpful here, because instead of 4, because as I mentioned, these are 1600 plastic coming out of all these refineries. So instead of splitting into 4, we can get away with splitting it into 2, which just makes the so much simpler. Then same thing again. I've got the overflows there. Again, I don't know why I did that. Yeah, and then you can see the first and your best goes in there, goes back into the loop, and everything else goes back into there, which goes back off to my big factory. So yeah, I hope this found this insightful, and how you can set up a sort of a more advanced PetroChem setup, and I will see you next time.